Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Albert Spriggs. I am a proud city councilman here in Henderson, North Carolina, and I am also a candidate for the United States House of Representatives in the North Carolina District 1. And I'm grateful to be able to share with you some of the things that we have planned once we get into office and to discuss some of the issues that I believe are most important to the residents in our district. And just to begin, for those who are watching outside of North Carolina, we have been dealing with redistricting. We've completed that process for the most part, but what has happened is the North Carolina district that I'm running in, that my city of Henderson is in, there has been some changes to the district overall. So right now in this district, there are, if I'm not mistaken, 19 rural counties that make up a population estimated between 800,000 to pushing almost a million. But if you look on the census data, it'll probably round up around 800,000 to 900,000, maybe just a bit less than that 800,000. But our district, again, like I said, is a district of rural counties. Pretty much the way I describe it to people when I say rural counties, there's a small city inside of a county. That city is small, and it takes about 5 minutes once you travel outside of that city to be in the county. So when you're in North Carolina, you hear a lot of people say, hey, I live in the county, I'm headed out to the county, and that's what that is about. But the district that I'm running for many decades has been poor. And when I say poor, I'm not talking about the people necessarily, who I always like to remind everyone we're rich in spirit, we're rich in love, and we are some hard workers. But based on the census data, we are one of the poorest districts in North Carolina, if not the region. So that means that we have not had a lot of the economic opportunities and the upward mobility that you may see in some of the largest cities in North Carolina, like Raleigh and Durham and Charlotte. So when you see my platform at jason4carolina.com, and that's the number 4, just understand that everything I'm addressing is to improve our quality of life and to decrease our poverty rate so that in 10 years, when the census data comes out, we will not be still classified as one of the poorest regions in the state. So as a candidate, people always ask, well, how do you get that done? And on our website, you'll see a lot of actions that we would like to take to remedy this issue. But most importantly, it starts with having a federal representative who is an advocate, a federal representative who pretty much for the most part of his or her day is talking about their district, talking to industry about their district. When they're on the news, if they're in DC, they're not taking shots at the current president or even the past president or pointing fingers across the aisle. I'm running in a Democratic primary, but I wasn't raised to blame people for the shortcomings of us as a population, as a people. I try to take kind of things on my shoulder and move forward and look for solutions. So when I'm in DC and I'm being interviewed at the Capitol or wherever, you're not going to hear me taking shots at the Republicans or the past president or kind of buddying up, cozying up to our current president, because my focus is on our district. The reason I say that real quickly is because by definition and by design, a representative for U.S. Congress should be focused on their district, which is why we have a 2-year cycle. And in those 2 years, we're supposed to be working really, really hard, not to stay in office, but to make some tangible changes in the district that we're representing. And that's a challenge, right? So you have, what is it, 435 representatives in Congress, aside from the 100 senators. So you have to be a good politician. You have to be diplomatic. You have to be willing to compromise at some point. And you have to be extremely vocal about the things that matter most to our residents or the residents in the district. So to just kick it off, and you'll hear me say this probably more than most. I am a term limits candidate, and not just a term limit candidate in that I'm hoping for legislation, or I'm hoping that when legislation comes up in DC that there are enough votes to limit me and others in office. No, I'm a voluntary term limit candidate, which means that when I go to office, when I go to DC, you're going to have me in office as a U.S. representative in the House for 6 years. So which means when I go to DC, I can't be playing around and buddying up. I've got to really get to work to make sure that we have the industry opportunity, good paying jobs that we deserve in the counties that make up our district. Also, what you hear is a move for constitutional amendments. This is being led by a great organization that I strongly support, the U.S. Term Limits. And they're looking to take a different route instead of just waiting on legislators to vote on something that legislators do not normally approve, which is term limits. They're pushing to make it a constitutional amendment to limit representatives or people in Congress, very similar to what the presidency is limited to, 2 terms. So, you might see me wearing a t-shirt. When you go to my website or our social media pages, you'll see probably the largest thing you'll see is term limits. I'm about term limits. I believe it's very important. I believe in moving out the way and giving other people an opportunity. And for the generation coming after me, I've always said this, they have so much knowledge. I think they're much smarter than we are. And I think they have ideas that I haven't even thought of. And they deserve an opportunity to step in and serve the public. In saying that, I said this a year and a half ago. We've been campaigning for a year and a half. Our campaign registered with the FEC when no candidate stepped up to run. There was an incumbent in the position, because we felt strongly about really bringing some visible changes to everybody, Black, white, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Green Party, regardless of your public-private beliefs. We believe that it's the job of a representative to truly represent all those interests of their population. So we've been doing this for a year and a half, and we've had the opportunity to really dig in deep and to be in the communities that we're talking about need our representation. But like I said this a year and a half ago. You go in to DC making $174,000 a year as a representative. So every year that I'm in office, you're not going to hear me say this word much, but I can promise this. I'll be giving back $74,000 of my personal salary to nonprofits throughout the North Carolina District 1, the Congressional District 1, because these nonprofits during this pandemic and even in the past are at the ground level helping the population that needs it most. They're working hard. And I tell people all the time, when I say that, they say, well, you must not understand how expensive it is to live in DC. I do. We spend a lot of time in DC. It's kind of like a second home for myself and my family. But I tell people this as well. We have been blessed to purchase some property. We have been blessed to even be, at this point, homeowners separately from the property. on salaries that are well below the federal poverty level. So in saying that, I think, giving back 74,000 that leaves 100,000, I think we'll make it. I think we'll be all right. But most importantly, we want to make sure that we're setting an example, first off, term limits, and we really do not want to be seen as corruptible by money. So what do? You give back. And we're excited about that. I'm excited to get into office, but I can't wait to be able to write those checks to the nonprofits that have been a blessing to our family, our communities. So that's where I stand, on that issue. So again, when you go to jason4carolina.com, and that's the number 4, you'll see a lot of issues, and I love to address them. We have a podcast. So when you go to our website at jason4carolina.com, there's a tab that says podcast, and you'll be able to actually hear what I feel about issues. I'm not into politicians or people that are not transparent, especially when they're serving the public. I want you to know the interviews I did on the podcast were actually with one of my sons. And I did that because, first off, he is of a generation who is going to replace us. And I want to make sure they're able to get into the offices and in internships in DC much easier than it has been for myself and others in the past. There's been really a glass ceiling when it comes to mobility into those positions. But at that podcast, we talk about everything. We talk about the police. We talk about immigration. We talk about poverty. We talk about inflation. We talk about jobs, the military. We talk about voting rights, climate, and we talk about abortion. We talk about education. I do want to say this, though. The average day in our district, we're not fighting with each other about abortion. We're not fighting with each other about guns. We're not fighting each other about different presidents. We're tight-knit communities. We're a lot of time in these towns in my district, everybody's related or connected. So we care about each other. We want to make sure that we have enough food in our house. We want to make sure our lights stay on, our water's running. And I tell people all the time, if you are in one of the 19 counties in the U.S. Congressional District 1, where I'm running as a candidate, if you are on the side of the road needing help, we're not gonna ask you what your affiliation is or what are your personal beliefs. We're just gonna help, and that's what we're about. So when you see perhaps maybe some other candidates, trying to I like to say stir the pot, stir up an argument, just know that's not us. That might be just someone trying to get some endorsements from a large organization or some funding. I don't know. I can't speak to them. But that's not us. We're not like that. In our district, we have local municipalities and counties who have really been the leaders in keeping everybody afloat in our population. And I bring that up because when the pandemic hit, we had a lot of towns had issues really maintaining services because of the lack of funding. And it's always tough as a local municipality or county government to get funding. It's a process, it's competitive. But local cities and counties are the ones that are doing it. Now, I say that because, again, I'm a Henderson City Councilman. So, again, I'm kind of at the forefront of making sure that policies and services are available to the populations that need it most, which honestly is all of our citizens. So as a elected official already, I understand kind of how it works when it comes to funding and lack of funding. And it's been tough. It's been challenging for cities. And what I can say positive about what's going on currently right now is that we have an administration who has stepped up and giving not only citizens with stimulus checks and other programs and grants, but cities and county governments the resources needed to tackle some of the most pressing issues. And I'm grateful for that. As a federal representative, that's one of the things I look forward to really continuing, regardless if the pandemic has, hopefully kind of dissipated, if we're still going through it, or if something else happens. It's my job as a federal representative to make sure that our cities and counties are fully supported by the federal government. But not just city government and county government, right? What happened when the pandemic hit? We had a lot of small businesses that suffered. And I think the idea was that, from our view, we were seeing corporations, larger companies, who had the resources, had the personnel to apply and get these grants and this funding that the government put out. But the small businesses suffered. So many of our small businesses have closed their doors, and sadly, a lot of those doors will never reopen. In my view, and as a federal representative, that cannot happen. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, of our country. So you'll often hear me talk about making sure that we have programs already in place and continued funding so that if a tragedy hits, and it doesn't have to be a pandemic, we're in North Carolina, so we deal with a lot of hurricanes, things of that nature. Regardless of what happens, small businesses need to have the opportunity and equitable resources to keep their doors open. What else do we talk about in our district? Again, a reminder, we don't argue all day about abortion or gun rights or different presidents. We want jobs and well-paying jobs. So you'll see me discuss this on the podcast at jasonforcarolina.com, but also you'll see me discuss this when I'm in DC, whenever a camera is in front of me. And the reason I say that is because in our district, it's rural. We want the ability to find good paying jobs. It could be a coffee shop. Now, I'm recording this at Sadie's Coffee Corner in Henderson, North Carolina, which has been a godsend to our community. It represents growth and diversity, a place where people can get together, a place of refuge for many people, and it's a meeting space. And these jobs are important. Perhaps some of the smaller businesses may not be able to pay as much as the larger corporations, but at the end of the day, we need good paying jobs and great atmospheres. And you'll always hear me talking about that particular issue, because when it comes to special interest groups and some of these larger organizations, usually as a federal representative, we're dealing with groups that represent industry. Now, if I know that there is a group representing a particular industry that can be a benefit to the population in my district here in North Carolina, I have no problem opening my door to them, so that way they can open their doors to jobs, well-paying jobs in our area. We are land rich, and a company, if they're invited or encouraged, can come in with some great opportunities, even incentives, and plant jobs in our community. It's important because, remember, I'm going back to our issue with poverty. So good paying jobs give families better opportunities, larger paychecks. That's a stimulant for the economy in itself. Also, at the federal level, what you'll hear me discussing often is making sure that our community colleges, universities, colleges, four-year colleges, and HBCUs in our district are supported. They shouldn't have to, year over year, lobby me as a representative or those around me to get funding that they need to thrive, to give students of all ages and backgrounds the opportunity to get degrees, which allows them to get better positions, open up small businesses, and in turn, of course, help deal with the issue of poverty in our district. So, as a federal representative, it is my job to ensure that these institutions are supported through federal resources. And again, at the beginning and end of the day, it is my job as a representative to be an advocate for our community. I think what I would like everyone to do who is watching this or trying to find out about myself and my team is to really go to our website at jason4carolina.com. And again, that's the number 4. And look through the issues, look through my background, to really get a feel of who I am as a candidate. Because I always like to tell people, especially locally, as a city councilman, I'm the same individual that you'll see in the grocery store. I'm going to talk, speak, act, and be polite and kind in the same way. I'm the same individual. And at the end of the day, I'm a resident of the district I'm pushing to represent, and I'm certainly a representative of the district that I'm serving as a city councilman. Our district is full of citizens who are intelligent, who are kind, who are hardworking. It is not the fault of them, it's not our fault that we have been left behind per se in America. We haven't been given the opportunities to thrive, but I tell you what, we have a wonderful opportunity now. And in this time that we have, it's important we have a representative who is not going to divide, but is going to push for unity and togetherness, so that again, when it comes another 10 years and our census data comes out, which affects our funding as a district, we are no longer classified as poor and destitute and out of touch. We're ready to thrive. It's my job to make sure that in this next upcoming 6-year, 7-year, 8-year period, that we do that. I'm grateful for all the support I've gotten. We got some exciting things ahead. And again, I encourage everyone to go to my website at www.jason4carolina.com. I encourage you to go to my podcast, which you can find through that website. And I encourage you to check out the social media pages. I mean, we've got it. We've got the TikTok, we've got the Instagram. If you're on LinkedIn and you want to see the journey kind of from the beginning to the end, or on Twitter, hop on that and you'll see that again, for a year and a half, we've been digging in. And we're just getting started. Voting, early voting begins on April 28th. And voting day is May 17th. So I encourage you to definitely check me out, educate yourself. I'd love your support. And remember that you will, just as you're seeing me now, have access to me when I'm in DC. Henderson, North Carolina is my home, so I'll be just as much in our district as I am in DC, and making sure that everybody has the opportunity that I'm representing in our district to be a part of the political process. Again, I'm grateful. April 28th, early voting begins. May 17th is Election Day. Thank you all for everything you've done for our district, for your communities, wherever you're watching. My name is Jason Albert Spriggs, and I'm looking forward to your support and being your next representative here in the wonderful state of North Carolina. Thank you all for everything, and God bless.